Hey there, this is Indie Author Blueprint, and this is your host, Michelle Rayburn. Today we're going to be talking about what happens when you want to take the next step after publishing only on KDP. If you've listened to past episodes, you know that I recommend that you publish on KDP if you're starting out and you don't listen to all the advice that says you have to publish everywhere. Now, I don't mean you never publish anywhere, so that's why we got here to today. In Indie Author Blueprint, I really focused on Amazon KDP because it is a starting place, and I have built this Substack as kind of like a mini course for people getting started as indie publishers. But if you've had some success, you've finally done it, your first book is published on Amazon KDP, maybe you've seen some sales trickle in, maybe a handful of reviews, and now you're wondering, should I put my book everywhere? Should it be available in other places besides just Amazon? Independent bookstores, traditional bookstores, Apple Books, Kobo, all the ones that are out there. Should I have it in those places? Well, this is a question I hear from indie authors when I have conversations. And my answer usually surprises people because it's not the same as the advice you get everywhere else. I say don't go wide, which is the term for this, distributing wide. Don't go wide just because you can. Go wide when there's proof that your book is ready and when you're ready to manage it. Today, we're going to talk about how to know if you're ready to take that step. I'm going to do a 3-part series. So next week, I'm going to continue talking about more, and then the week after that. So it's like a little mini series here where we're talking about what to do when you're going beyond Amazon KDP. So like I said, you've heard me insist that KDP is where new authors should start out. And I recommend they do their first book there. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But now bookstores can get your book through KDP. So why would I recommend that you go somewhere else? Because if you've published and you've clicked expanded distribution, well, it doesn't mean they will. And here's why. Traditional bookstores rarely order books through KDP expanded distribution because it simply doesn't fit their business model. Amazon is their direct competitor, so buying from them feels counterproductive. And on top of that, KDP doesn't allow bookstores to return unsold copies, and it offers lower wholesale discounts than the industry standard, which leaves the stores with little profit margin and higher risk. So for them, ordering through Amazon to get your book requires extra steps outside the systems that the bookstore already uses, which adds unnecessary work. And for these reasons, most stores prefer to order through Ingram, where they get standard discounts and some returnability options and seamless ordering alongside the rest of their inventory. But, big but, it doesn't mean you're ready to use IngramSpark and distribute widely there. You'll be up against a lot of other books. So unless you're prepared to do some big marketing, you might not get bookstores even interested in ordering stock for their inventory. So let's look at what to evaluate to make that decision. And then we'll put it up against what you can do with Amazon KDP. And then I'm going to help you figure out how to decide if you should go wide with your books. If you're considering whether or not you should release your book on something like IngramSpark, in addition to using Amazon KDP, the first thing I encourage you to do is revisit your goals. Let's start here with the why. Why did you publish this book in the first place? Your answer matters more than you think because it drives every decision you make about distribution. I've met people who have a goal where it was simply to hold their book in their hands and share it with a small circle of friends and family. And it might even be like a family kind of memoir, but they still insist that they want to go through the work of doing IngramSpark. And I know that that's not the kind of book that the traditional bookstores are looking for because that person doesn't have a very big platform and who's coming into their bookstore to look for that person's memoir. So going wide in this case might be worth more work than it's worth, even though you heard somebody on a webinar say you must do this. The other thing is if your goal is to build a sustainable author career, then you might decide that wide distribution will eventually become part of your long-term strategy. And so at this moment, this is a great time for you to even hit pause on the podcast if you need to write down, why am I thinking about this? What do I want my book to accomplish? And who do I most want to reach? How do I want readers to get the book? Through Amazon only or in any store they walk into? And I say that really broadly because it isn't any store they walk into literally, but they could walk into a store and request that that store order the book in for them. So when I say it, that's what I mean. I don't want you to get grandiose ideas that if you distribute widely, you're going to walk into a bookstore and see your books on an end cap, because it's not. It just doesn't work that way. And I don't want to give you false hope. But being clear about your purpose helps you to make a decision based on strategy and not on fear of missing out. I think way too many people think they have to follow all the advice because they have this FOMO and thinking that there's this would be, maybe, could be sale out there that they could capture. And somebody says, well, a bookstore's not going to if you don't do this. Yeah, but that doesn't mean the flip side is true, that they are going to if you do that. Okay, the second thing that then you want to evaluate after you've looked at revisiting your goals, we want to look at some signs that your book might be ready. So first, let's look at the encouraging signs that you are ready to expand. One, if you put it out there on Amazon and you have consistent sales, your book is selling regularly, and not because you begged your family and your friends to buy copies, but you have real sales coming in every month. This tells you that strangers are discovering your book, which means something about your cover, your title, the description are doing their job, and the content is hitting its mark. So if you're selling well on Amazon, that's a strong clue that your book will have traction elsewhere. So that gives you some hope that a bookstore might be interested. Another is that you have some solid reviews. Maybe 15 or 20 honest reviews. There's not a magic number. I know people want to tell you there's a magic number of how many reviews you need before it makes an impact. Just you have some, and they're not all 5-star reviews. There's a mix. You might even have the proof that your book is legit because you got some 2 and 3-star reviews. It didn't hit the mark with everybody. Some of my best-selling books have some lower reviews, even though it's like 95% 5-star reviews. It doesn't matter. It just shows that it didn't hit with everybody, but it's legit. And so bookstores and libraries will see a book that has a track record before stocking it. Another is reader requests. If people are asking if they can buy your book outside of Amazon, maybe they want to order for a book club, they want a bulk discount, or maybe through the library purchasing system. Okay, so you have some demand, you have some people asking. And then the last one here would be that you have a functioning author platform, like an email list or a social media presence or a following on Substack or speaking events or something where you know how to keep the book visible because you're going to help those bookstores sell the book. Okay, on the flip side of that, now let's look at signs you should wait. If any of these are true, then staying exclusive to KDP for right now might be the wiser choice. One, low or no sales yet. If your book isn't moving on Amazon, and then putting it everywhere else is not going to suddenly make it sell. Distribution isn't marketing, really. And so when you put it out there, that's not marketing it widely. It's just making it available widely. Another sign is that if you haven't taken the time to really polish your keywords or your categories or your book description, maybe you published a while ago and you haven't revisited any of that, you want to start there and clean it up, because whatever you're using there, you want it to be ready to go for the other platform anyway. Another is if you don't have any marketing plan, and by marketing plan, that can vary widely from a really complex marketing plan to something simple. But if you haven't even put any thought into how you're going to get your book out there outside of just releasing it, then you're not ready. And I've helped authors publish who have said, I don't want to market this book. I don't plan to do any marketing. I'm doing this for the fun of it. I have multiple clients who have told me that. That is perfectly fine. But then it's a waste of your time to put it in the other place, because the couple of sales that you would get for the flip side of having, we'll talk about the hidden costs in a minute, it's not worth it then. And the other is it's not time if you're feeling overwhelmed. If adding another dashboard and another thing you have to log into and another report you have to get every month, it's different. The system is different on IngramSpark. You don't get a 1099 from them at the end of the year like you do from Amazon KDP. So it's just a little different when you're tracking all of your sales and stuff. All of that, if that sounds overwhelming to you, it's just not the time for you. And so sometimes the best move is to double down on KDP on what you're doing and really master that and give your book the time to gain the traction before adding some complexity. And so if you've released your book and you're looking back and you're like, yeah, I could have really done a better job of doing something with this, do that first before you think about trying to publish it widely. That's not your solution. Right now, your solution is to make it shine the best it can on Amazon, and then you're ready to put it somewhere else. Now let's talk about the hidden costs of going wide, because there is some cost, not just financial. So a lot of authors assume that going wide means that you're just checking more boxes. Like, I'm just like, it's almost oversimplistic. Like, I'm just logging in and saying, click, it's out there. No, there's a little bit more to it. One, there's a learning curve. Platforms like IngramSpark require you to understand things like wholesale discounts and returns. That is something we'll talk about in a upcoming episode. The format requirements are a little bit different for the cover and the ebook. There are some things that get those rejected. So you have to know what you're doing, or you have to have a designer that knows what they're doing. There is a financial cost after a while. When you start out, the first 60 days, you can make the changes and you can upload without a cost. That used to have a cost and doesn't now. But then if you want to make any changes after that window of time, then you have to pay to make those changes. So if you find a typo and you're trying to fix it, you're going to have to upload a new file and pay to do that. Let's see, other costs. Time is a big cost. If you're going to go in there and do the uploading, you're going to manually put it in there. If you're making pricing changes or anything like that, you have multiple platforms. You're going to change it on KDP, you're going to change it there. So, those are just some of the things. Also, if you've published it and you've made the mistake of using a free ISBN or barcode, you're going to need to get your cover updated. You might end up having to publish with a different ISBN number if you didn't have your own. So there's some of those things that get complicated. So if you're not willing to invest time, energy, money, these costs can add stress and distraction from writing books. So if that sounds like it's too much, maybe now's not the time. So as you're evaluating these things, some steps you can ask, some questions you can ask before you take that leap is, do I have the time right now to learn and manage another system? Am I financially ready to pay setup fees or cover the costs, whatever I have to do? What specific results do I hope to gain by going wide? And am I willing to play the long game? Because wide distribution builds slowly. Bookstores aren't just stacked up waiting. Oh, I made a pun there. They aren't just waiting to buy your book, sitting on the edge of their seat. It's going to take some time to build some traction there if you're going to do that. Now, I want to pause and encourage you here. If it sounds discouraging after I said some of these things, staying with KDP only for your first book is not selling out to Amazon. It's actually the smartest way to build a foundation. So even if you're somebody who wishes you weren't having to use Amazon as the way to start out, just know that this is kind of your test market for your book. It's like test driving your publishing strategy on one platform before adding more complexity. And it's just an easier platform to learn and manage, so it's a better place to play around with it and learn some of that. And then when you're building those slow and steady sales in one place, it keeps you from spreading yourself too thin everywhere where you see no movement at all. So if you see some traction in one place, it's actually kind of encouraging. And so it motivates you to try something different. I'm telling you that because that's what I did. And for experimental purposes, I've kept book one only on Amazon and did not take that one to IngramSpark like I did with some of the other things I've published, just because I want to show that a book can be successful only on Amazon, because I'm hitting the target market and those people may or may not be looking to buy from bookstores. And for sure, the brick and mortar stores are not looking to carry my Bible study workbook. It's just one of those things that's not what's flying off their shelves. So if your first book sells well, I encourage you to use that as your test. Now, if you're somebody writing fiction like a series, this is a little different because you're not going to publish book one only on Amazon and then put the other ones wide. But I'm saying if you have a book that you've tested out and now you have a brand new idea and the two are not necessarily connected, why not leave the one as it is as your practice book and then go ahead and try something new with the next book that you put out there? That's one way of like testing it out. And I say that because if you're working on book 1 right now, it's overwhelming and people start to really hate their book project when they get into too many different things and they can't figure them out. So this practice book helps you to really experience that success and then makes you know, I can do this. I'm motivated. I can continue on and try something new with the next one. The big picture then that we're looking at, and the thing I want to leave you with here, and then I have some bonus yet to go through before we're done, but I want you to know that going wide is a business decision. It's not a badge of honor. It might sound that way when you hear writers talking, but it's okay if you're the one who's like not contributing to the conversation and talking about all the places you released your book. You do you. You do the thing that works for you to get the sales, the reviews, the systems in place, everything that makes it worthwhile to you to then think about expanding. Now, I want to leave you with a bonus. This one's for everybody, not just for paid subscribers. I want to give you another factor to consider, even if you go through all that extra work. It doesn't mean that a bookstore will necessarily carry your book. And so as a bonus, I want to give you some examples of why bookstore owners hesitate to stock an indie book so that you can start thinking about these things before you take that leap and decide you're going to release a book on IngramSpark as well as KDP. Number 1, limited shelf space. Every bookstore has a finite number of shelves, and every book they carry, they're choosing not to carry something else. Indie books have to compete with thousands of traditionally published titles, many of which come with proven sales data, national marketing campaigns, and publisher reps that go to the store to show the bookstore purchaser what books are available. So it's limited. And so that's number 1. They have to think carefully about what they're going to carry in the bookstore. Now, the second thing is a risk of unsold inventory. Bookstores make money selling books and not by letting them sit on shelves. So if your book doesn't sell, they're stuck with dead inventory. And if you don't offer returnability through IngramSpark, they can't return the books. Now, this is a risk I've taken, and it is something that I think makes it harder for me to get my books in a bookstore. But I have chosen not to do returnability because it doesn't fit with my model for profit. Because if a bookstore can order a bunch of books and I don't have a say over how many and they don't sell and they return them, I have to decide if I'm going to want IngramSpark to shred those books. I have to pay for the printing costs because IngramSpark's not giving them away. Or do I want them to mail me those books that I've already paid the printing cost on before they went to the bookstore? And then I'm going to have to pay the postage to get them to me. So there's some decisions I'm going to have to make. And if the bookstore doesn't see it as a returnable book, they might not want to take their risk on your book. The next thing that can make it difficult for them to want to carry the book is the wholesale discount that you allow. Now, you can set that between 30% and 55%. Bookstores expect 40 to 55% so that they have a margin so that they buy your book and then they get a profit when they mark it up and sell it. So if you set it at a really low discount, like 30%, so that you can make more money, the stores won't order because their profit margin is too thin. I end up going around 50% on that. But on my hardcover books, it's really hard for me to make a profit at 50% unless I mark them way up. So just something that makes a big difference in whether they're willing to pick up my book. Another one is professional presentation. Bookstore buyers are trained to spot books that look amateurish. So if your cover doesn't meet genre expectations, there's formatting issues or poor editing, or a spine that's really thin because, they want it to display on a shelf. So if your book is too short and it can't have words on the spine, then they don't want it on the shelf. And so if it just doesn't look like it belongs next to traditionally published books, then they're going to pass on it because those books they choose reflect on the store. Another one is demand and discoverability. Bookstore owners like to stock books that have a buzz about them. So maybe a local author has events scheduled and there are going to be a lot of people coming to the event. Maybe people are requesting books, or there are titles that are getting media attention. But if there is no visible demand, then they don't have a really good reason to go back to number one, investing shelf space. And then lastly, a business relationship. Traditionally, bookstores work with publisher reps and distributors who make their ordering easy. And with indie authors, there's no existing relationship, which means extra work for them, unless you make it easy by providing a one sheet with the ISBN number, the price, and the distributor information. I create a one sheet for each book that I publish, so I have that available in case I need that. Maybe a local author pitch, like if you're doing a signing, you go and say, I'll do a signing and I'll promote the book to my audience, and then they'll buy from your checkout. I've seen some that do that, even in chain bookstores. They will purchase a certain number of copies and have you do a book signing. And then if the book is priced competitively, it also establishes a business relationship with other books in the category. If you have to price it so high in order to recoup what you have in it because it's print on demand, it also means it's too high for them to want to sell in their store and their customers aren't going to buy it. So all of these factors is why I often tell authors that you need to think through all of the details. You need to go do the work of marketing. You need to build the relationships. You need to show the store that stocking your book will be worth their time and their space. IngramSpark puts your book in a catalog, but it doesn't put it on the shelf. And so getting it out there in a catalog is just one step, but that's not the end. You need to figure out how to get it from the catalog to the bookshelf. All right. Now, as you think through everything I've talked about today, you might want to get a journal and do a little bit of thinking through, sketching out some of your goals. What does success look like for your book specifically? Make a list of what's working really well right now with your marketing and what gaps you see that you still would like to fill. Where do you feel lost or behind in the process of publishing the book? Ask yourself where your time, your space, your money, your bandwidth, all of that is as you're making these decisions. Those kinds of questions will help you make a decision based on facts and not just a knee-jerk reaction to somebody saying, you're not going to get your book sold if you don't go wide. So that's important to really think it out. Now, in the next episode, we're going to talk about some of the basics you need to know about IngramSpark, how it compares to KDP. I've covered that a little bit in the past, but we'll go a little deeper into that. We'll look at what the setup process looks like, and we'll talk about why it's the preferred distributor for most bookstores and libraries. I've hinted on that a little bit today as well. But if you're thinking about expanding beyond Amazon, you don't want to miss that episode. You want to get the whole series as it comes out here. All right, I want to thank you for listening today. This whole episode has been available for free. This is not one that's behind the paywall. I do have content that is, and this week I'll be sending a bonus out to subscribers that is behind the paywall. But if you enjoyed the show, if this is helping you, I'd love it if you'd become a paid subscriber. If not, continue. I'll be putting out all kinds of free stuff still. And so I want you to join the discussion. The comments are open on this episode, so come on in and talk about your experience with going wide if you have done that, or explain why you've chosen not to do that if you haven't. So let's make a community here on Indie Author Blueprint on Substack. Just hop right over there to Substack and find me, and you sign up and subscribe. And you'll either get it in your inbox or on the app, whatever you prefer, to get those weekly episodes and the blog posts and all the bonuses that come out with it. All right, thank you so much for listening today. Again, this is Michelle Rayburn. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next week.